been reading your results on the Flossie Quilt Along survey that I sent out about a week ago, and there's so much good stuff here. And there's a lot of it that has absolutely nothing to do with Flossie that we won't be covering, but I thought they were such good questions that I kind of wanted to have a little separate question and answer thing that, you know, is apart from the quilt along, but maybe just a little bit to do with it, and maybe get some of these questions answered. All right, so how do you decide which size quilt to make? I would think that this would be based on what you have time for, what you want, maybe what kind of fabric stash you have. I like to keep a couple of baby quilts on hand so that whenever a baby is born and I want to gift this baby a quilt, I'll have one. Normally I don't like to make a quilt for a specific person. I want to make the quilts I want to make, and then if I decide I'm going to gift one, I pick from the quilts I've made. Every now and then I'll do something special for somebody, but most of the time, you know, I just want to make the quilts I want to make. If you are making a quilt for your bed, obviously you would probably go with the larger size quilt. Most of the quilts I make, we drag around here in the living room, so I usually end up making throw size. They're my favorite size to make, so I'm going to be making that 70 by 70. Looking over your answers about what size everyone is making, it looks like it's just scattered across the board. We have a lot more 40 inch by 40 inch participants than I thought there was going to be. How to square up the blocks. I like this question. How to square up the blocks. Okay, and how to add a border. This comes up a lot, and I don't feel like you should be squaring up your blocks. They should be square already. The only time you would square something up is something that you have to trim down, like a half square triangle, maybe a hourglass, anything that specifically requires you to trim. Everything that we make larger so that we can trim because they're more difficult blocks, like half rectangle triangles, sometimes a flying geese, depending on how you make it. But these blocks that we're going to be making in Flossie, you shouldn't be trimming those down. If they're coming out the incorrect size, then you could trim them down, and I would just get a ruler, that maybe a 12 by 12 inch ruler that you could do that with. I might cover something like that in a separate demo from the Quilts Along. So, all right, the second part of this quilter's question was adding borders. So decide on the border that, let's say that we're making the 70 by 70 inch Flossie, and you want to put, you know, a 6 inch border on it. You would make your border sides 6.5 by 70.5, sew them on, then you would add that what's across, and then do the bottom and the top. You would still do the 6.5, but the length would change. If you want to email me directly, I'll give you the exact measurements for something like that. I actually have just released a new border demo that might be helpful for actually sewing the border on. All right, spray basting. We're not going to be covering spray basting in this quilt along, but I have a demo that walks you through spray basting on a wall. I know that's not for everyone. I also have a demo for spray basting small things like pillows and things like that. So I can link to that. Converting yardage needed for wide backing material. So I just released a new free PDF that actually does this for you based on the quilt size you're making, and the quilt sizes that I use in the PDF. The quilt sizes that I use in the PDF are all of my quilt sizes that I use often, and they're also kind of quilt sizes in between. I'm going to do a demo really soon about that download, and I haven't made it public yet. I've just sent it to email subscribers. So I will do a demo for how to read that chart and all that. That's coming. I have some difficulty with sporadic tucks and difficulty moving the quilt on my domestic machine when free motion quilting. I'd love some tips for those of us who don't have a long arm machine or a machine that sits in a cabinet. Okay, that cabinet that you see in some, if you've taken my Finish It class, that cabinet is really, really helpful, that your machine sits down into it. But I quilted 10 years on a basic sewing machine with it sitting on top of the table. So it's doable, but I'm not going to lie, it is a lot more difficult than what you see me doing in my demos or the setup that I currently have. those tucks, I'm going to assume you're referring to tucks on the back of the quilts. Like maybe you're getting tucks on your backing. That's a basting problem. And I still have that happen to me sometimes, but it's where I just didn't baste it as thorough as I should have. I spray baste, so it might be like a spot where I didn't spray great. If the tucks are on the front, I've only experienced that in straight line quilting. So I'm not sure if you would be getting tucks on the front, but if they're on the back, that's pretty common, and they're a pain. I can sympathize with you, but it's a basting problem. Choosing fabrics. So I made the demos yesterday for choosing fabrics, so they're fresh in my mind right now, and we thoroughly go over this. Actually, I was a little worried it was going to be too much going over it, or I put too much out there, and then that may overwhelm you. I was really worried about that. But what I've done is I've shown you two different tester quilts, one of them where she didn't follow the rules, and one of them where she did follow the rules, and I've broken down how to do each way. On the one where you follow the rules, which is what I'm going to be doing during the quilt-along as well, the one where you follow the rules, light and dark are the rules, by the way. I've given you pointers for choosing fabrics, or the easiest way to choose fabrics that I can come up with. So it's going to be pretty spelled out. Best use of fat quarters. Any quilt pattern in stash work needs fat quarters. Most of my quilt patterns have fat quarters. I would say the majority of them have fat quarters. So just pick a pattern. A lot of these are just really sweet. Could you please cover color selection? I read the book on how you reject colors, but how do you pick what goes next to what when sewing together? Okay, this is what we'll cover in week 2. I usually kind of gloss over this in the quilt-alongs and get nitty-gritty with the actual piecing, but I will try to cover this a little bit more. But let me just go ahead and tell you that I pick based on either prettiness, like these two fabrics look really cute together, or contrast, if I'm needing contrast. It's a block of Flossie, and you can see how it's built. It's built with one fat rectangle of white or cream, and then 3 skinny rectangles of color. Those color I pick just based on what I think is pretty, and then of course the other one I'm going for contrast. Now that's not how you have to do this. It's just what I think this question meant, maybe. But yeah, I usually just pick what I think looks good together. So these 3 strips look good. That's what I'm sewing together. You could also base it on contrast too. So, sweet. Okay, I really want to use my stash. All my questions are regarding how to make a scrappy quilt look cohesive. We are covering this in detail, but my number one advice for scrappy quilts, and I think I've said this many times, is to limit your colors. Limit your colors and everything gets easier. When you're making a scrappy quilt, if I make it in pink, orange, and red, or all warm colors, there's a lot less opportunities for me to choose a bad fabric in that mix than if I just let, any color in. So just limit your colors. Nesting the seams didn't work for me in the chicken quilt. I don't know why they wouldn't line up for me. We're going to be nesting seams again in this quilt. I'm not sure if it's, I don't have the pattern in front of me, so I'm not sure if it's within the block or if it's just sewing the blocks together. But I know that when we sew the blocks together, we'll be nesting seams. So I will cover that again. So that'll cover. But sometimes I wish we were in person and I could just show it in your fingers and show you those. They just click right into place. And it's about pressing. It's about pressing accurately, but they should just slide into place. But, some of these things, they just won't work for you and you get frustrated. But I'm going to cover this. How do you go about selecting the backing fabrics when you're using several fabrics? So scrappy backing. I just pick things that blend. So I pick the backing fabrics, I make sure those blend together, and then I make sure they all blend with the front of the quilt. If I have a quilt that has a lot of color on the front, like barely background, then I might pick a busier or a more saturated print for the back, and vice versa. If I have a If I have a quilt that has very saturated on the front, I'll pick a backing that has a lot of white or, something like that in it. But really, I just want to make sure that they all blend. There's probably so many schools of thought for this question. It's just about personal preference mostly. I'm a newbie, so hopefully I can keep up and do a good job. You will. It's going to be fun. And even when you get behind, it's okay because the videos are going to stay there forever. And you can, go at your own pace if you need to. Also, I don't know if you follow me on YouTube and Instagram, but YouTube is such a sweet little place right now. So if you want to ask for help in the comments of that particular week's demo or even on Instagram, people are so helpful, and you can always reach out if you need any additional help. You can reach out by email to me. So sweet. So sweet. All right. Just the layout with the gradient, maybe touch more on color value. So I did, in the demo that I made for week 1 yesterday, I did a lot. I talked about intensity, and I don't think I've ever talked about intensity before, maybe a little bit. So we're going to, I'm assuming that's what you mean by color value. I think we're talking about the same thing. But we're going to cover that a lot more. And I'll just say that when you're choosing fabrics, because I know that most of you are in the choosing fabric stage right now, you're probably not waiting for that week 1 video. If you're choosing a dark fabric, don't just choose one. And that was the main thing out of yesterday's demo. Don't just choose one. And I'm showing you several mock-ups where I picked just one, and you can see how it looks not so great. Not that it couldn't look great, it's just harder to make it look great. So whenever I choose something, like if I make it an all orange quilt and I'm going to throw some aqua mint color in it, I don't want to just choose one of those. I want to choose a few, or 2 at least, because it just will, your eyes are going to just automatically go to the dark or the light spot in the quilt. Interested in details of how you make your fabric choices? We're covering that. I would like to see tips on how you do the chunky binding, like recommended thread. How do you keep stitches even? How to decide thread color? I'm thinking maybe you haven't seen the demo that I have for that, because it's pretty thorough. It's actually an excerpt from one of my paid classes. I may redo that a little bit, and maybe I'm not explaining it. I need to know if you've seen that demo. I might need to redo it and make it a little bit more thorough. Checking for accuracy. We actually don't cover that a lot, do we? Okay, checking for accuracy. I'll try to cover this, but this is about seam allowance. And when your seam allowance is spot on, you don't need to do this. But that seam allowance is so hard, especially for new quilters. We're going to cover it. All right, cutting and assembling blocks, we're doing it. The quilt-along just keeps me on track. It's the reason I love quilt-alongs too, is because I get the quilt done at the end of the month. Organization. We'll cover organization a bit. I like when you share tips to be a better quilter, like cutting hints, things that help me better at quilting all my future quilts. I'm still new to quilting. Okay, we're going to cover all those tips. I just like the structure and schedule. Same. Okay, a lot of these I'm not reading because they're so complimentary. I'm not reading out loud because they're just sweet little messages. I really appreciate all the nice things that you used this space to say to me. It was just such a boost. How to use contrasting fabrics so they look good and deliberate. We're covering it. I finished up my checky quilt and I'm not happy. Oh no. I know that feeling. I don't know if you caught that what was it called? Dreamland quilt that I made in my Wholehearted fabrics, and I picked the wrong backing, and I was so sad about that quilt. I finished it, but I was sad about it. I have difficulty knowing the balance of color, choosing a main color with variations, how much of an accent to add in for interest. I feel like that is that I'm making an orange quilt, and I'm going to pop in some tiny bits of aqua. Pop in multiple tiny bits of aqua. It seems I get too much accent, so it gets muddled. That's just kind of one of those things I feel like you just learn the more you choose fabrics. It's hard to know how much of each color to add in, and we're all just kind of, seeing what works. And I feel like quilting is just this thing that you just do. It's not about having the finished quilt. It's just this set of tasks that you complete each quilt, and with every single quilt you complete, you learn a little bit more. And it's not always about what's right or wrong. A lot of the times it's just about what you like. So I I get all these comments on social media, and I really dislike this comment. I don't know why I let it irk me, but I let it irk me. And somebody will say, "Why are all your quilts the same color?" Well, obviously it's the colors that I like. I love that. I love this set of colors, so I keep making quilts in this set of colors. It's not the only colors I use. I just really like orange, so I use it in almost all of my quilts, because if I'm making a quilt that doesn't have it, I'm just like, what am I even doing? So it's really about preference. And I think the further you go with quilting, the more you gather what you like and what you don't like. All right, so the next question was, are you experiencing any frustrations in quilting that we could help with? Making sure I'm sewing the 1/4 inch allowance. That is everything, so I can't stress enough how important it is. When I first started quilting, I was like, who cares? But it so matters, because every block in a quilt is based on math, okay? So if that math is off on all of your blocks, then your quilt is off, and everything starts getting frustrating because nothing fits together. I actually have a class. It's about precision. It's over at my quilt class website, but it covers those tiny little mistakes, like the 1/4 inch seam, that can really mess you up, especially if you're just starting on quilting. Lack of time, needed to work on my projects. I hear you. Strengthen my cutting. This is something that takes practice, and sometimes it's the fact that you don't know how accurate you actually have to be. You have to get rid of any kind of inconsistency or frustration. Your cutting has to be accurate, and when I say accurate, I don't mean close. I mean it needs to be spot on, and that can take a lot of time to learn that kind of precision. But yeah, having rulers that don't move, so the rulers that have the sticky on the back, that can be helpful. Having your table a little higher so that when you're cutting, you're not hunched over, that can be helpful. Starching and pressing your fabrics before you ever cut them adds so much help. I can't stress this enough. Adds so much help to making yourself cut more accurately, cutting more accurately. It just really, really does it. And once I learned to do that, it was like my quilting went to everything coming out easy breezy. So now every time I sew something, it's just, I know it's the right size. I know everything's accurate because I'm doing I'm laying all the groundwork to set myself up for success. And when I first started quilting, I didn't do that at all. And it took years to learn that those things matter. And when you're first starting quilting, those kind of things can sometimes take the joy out of it. Like, I need to do all this before I can actually even start sewing. And sewing is the part that's fun, right? But if you don't set yourself up for success, if you don't do all those little pre-steps that, for some people it's very annoying to, if you don't do those things, then you end up frustrated later. So I just feel like it's just better to do it, as you go, instead of just, falling apart at the end. I can't tell you how many quilts I donated when I first started quilting, how many quilt tops that were half finished that I donated because I was so angry about, because I didn't do all those things. I didn't know to do them, and everything was just a mess. So I hate that that's happening, or I hate that it's sucking any kind of joy out of quilting. I can't find the pattern. I need a PDF. So the Flossie Quilt pattern is only available in my book Stash Work. It's a set of 4 patterns that we're doing quilt-alongs for all year long. It's not available as PDF because the file is so large, and I've tried over and over and over to make it available as a PDF, and nobody can open it. So you're going to have to get the book. It takes me forever to finish my quilts at home on my domestic if I don't send them to a long armor. Yeah, we're all there with you. We are all there with you. It costs money to send to a long armor, and they're so hard to finish at home. I understand. It's just kind of part of the quilting. I find that if you find something you love at every step of the quilt's journey, then it's easier to overcome. I mean, basting is the thing that I hate the most, but it helps me get to the free motion quilting part, and that's the part I love. Finishing the quilt after the top is done. I think that is probably one of the most common things. Quilters will make the quilt top and then never touch it again. I think that's, part of it. I have a class called Finish It that walks you through every step and gives you multiple ways. We cover straight line quilting, free motion quilting, multiple ways of basting, multiple ways of binding, if that is any kind of helpful to you. I like getting the quilts to the wash part because then you get to touch the crinkles. So it's always kind of like a let's get it to this step for me. Picking random fabrics instead of curated into a bundle. We have bundles. I'm not sure if this is what you were looking for as an answer, but we have kits for Flossie in the shop right now, and we're going to be putting more together this week. Shortcuts and tips, we're going to cover them. I get frustrated with the scant 1/4 inch seam. Also, pattern matching on back fabric. Oh, okay. We're not using the scant 1/4 inch seam on this one, but I'm gonna talk to you in detail about the 1/4 inch seam, which is what we'll be using. And pattern matching on the back, I don't do it. I do not have the patience to do that, so I don't have any tips on it. I can't do it. I use wide backs or I'll use scrappy backing. And that's why I use one or the other, because I don't want to pattern match. So I'm sorry, I don't have any tips for you. I plan on taking your class on free motion later. Yay! My main frustration these days is trying to quilt when I want to. Oh, a tornado destroyed her home. I'm so sorry. That's awful. Well, the quilt along is going to be here. I know this isn't very helpful. The quilt along will be here when you get everything sorted. When you get your sewing room back set up, the quilt along will still be here. All the demos will still be here for you. And I'm so sorry this happened to you. That is so awful. My only frustration is time for quilting. I don't think you can help me with that issue. Okay. That's everybody. That's everybody. I spent 3 hours on my computer this morning, and all I want to do down there is go and cut fabric, which is what I need to be doing. 1/4 inch seam, we're covering it. Not enough time to do it all. We're all experiencing it. Nesting seams, we're going to cover it. Finishing, I'm always jumping to the next thing. Yeah, I hear you. I don't know that I have tips for that. I kind of like having multiple projects going on at the same time. I feel like I feel like jumping is okay as long as I eventually come back to the other project. But I understand where you're coming from. Motivation. Hopefully these prizes will motivate you. We've got some fun prizes, and the week 3, I don't think I've released this yet, but I think I'm going to give away a lot of fabric. So hopefully that's motivating. Just need more time. I'm so sorry. Frustrated with consistently getting 1/4 inch seams when piecing. I keep getting this, and I would like to know if you're using a 1/4 inch foot, because that's probably the easiest way to get the 1/4 inch seam is to use the foot. I don't have a 1/4 inch foot myself. I use my needle plate. I'm going to show you in the quilt along how I use that needle plate to do that. Nothing that can be remedied. I just need 72-hour days, 14 days a week time stretcher. Keeping my seams straight. I have a walking foot that does not allow me to replace the foot. I love the walking foot, and I don't want to switch it out for another foot. I am the opposite of you. I do not like that walking foot unless I'm straight line quilting. I don't care for it. I used to use it on my binding, and I felt like it just I don't like the way it sounded. I just don't like the walking foot. I want to have one so that I can straight line quilt, but keeping my seam straight. Okay, so keeping my seam straight. The way that I keep my seam straight is I choose the line on the needle plate, and I want to keep the edge of my fabric, flush with that line. And I have to put glasses on to do it, but that's what the goal is. It's not always perfect, but if it can be good most of the time, that's good enough. I'm new to quilting, so everything I try for the first time is frustrating. But once I get it, I am good. Still learning how to cut correctly and sew a 1/4 inch seam as well as binding. Yes, it is. It is. And that's just part of it. That's just part of the experience. What do my kids call it when it's just part of it? They have a specific Gen Z word for it. Let me think of it. I don't know it. It's just something you have to go through. It's just something you have to... what can you do great the first time? nothing. Nothing. You can't do anything good the first time. You have to stay at it and get better. And stay with it. Stay with it, because quilting is so worth it, and it's something you can do forever. It's something you can just do by yourself. You can do it with a group. I feel like it's just the loveliest of hobbies. Still learning how to cut correctly. You are going to get so good at cutting. The more you cut, the more you do it. The better you get. I just made attic window and lost my points. That is seam allowance. That you're not getting your 1/4 inch seam. Learning to be more accurate is important to me. I will go over every tiny step that I use for my precision and my accuracy. And this does not have anything to do with the person who made this question, but a lot of times I get asked these things and the quilter isn't doing the setup. So the setup is press and starch your fabrics. When I say starch, I'm talking about an alternative starch. I used Best Press. It's an alternative starch. I always call it pressing spray. This makes your fabrics a little bit more crisper, and accuracy just kind of flows into that. So if you have sturdier, if you have that crispness that comes from the pressing spray, then it's easier for you to cut accurately. It's easier for you to piece accurately. So setting yourself up for these tiny things will help you down the road, and knowing where the 1/4 inch is will help you. Also, if you have a tendency to always be going over the 1/4 inch line, maybe you should go a little bit more scant. I don't want you to go scant, because we need these coming out at we need these blocks of Flossie coming out at their accurate size. I only use scant 1/4 inch seams when I'm trimming the block down. And we're not trimming anything in this quilt. But I'm going to show you on the needle plate exactly what I do. We're going to cover it pretty thoroughly. My quilt is far from perfect. My biggest issue is quarters. This 1/4 inch seam is just coming up over and over and over. I'm frustrated because I can't sew at the moment due to a sprain. No. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I have never had an accident where I couldn't sew. But if I did, I'd be prop that foot up on the ottoman over here, and I'd be English paper piecing all day long, because I'd have to get my fabric itch in. My machine is needing servicing. Yeah, I try to take mine in once a year, even when it's not messed up, because that thread and stuff builds up and just kind of messes up your machine, or you run over a pin and then your timing gets off. It's important, if you're sewing, as much as we do, then you're taking it in every year. I have 2, so that when I take one in, I've got a backup. Accurate cutting, where to position the fabric and cut. I always cut 1/16 bigger, and my blocks seem to work out. I'm interested to know what ruler you're using. And I don't want to try to get you to spend more money on rulers, because with how much everything costs right now. But the rulers with the sticky back, they stay put a lot easier than rulers without it. And I used the rulers without it for 10 years. And if you don't want to replace your rulers, you can buy those little True Grips. We sell them in the shop, and they don't last. They fall off eventually, but they're pretty inexpensive for like a whole bunch of them. So every time one falls off on the rulers I have that don't have the sticky back, I put those rulers on, and those rulers stay put. But I get you. Sometimes you're cutting fabric, and you've got your one hand holding the ruler down, and then your other hand is cutting with the rotary cutter. And at the very end, it always shifts. Sometimes you can. I will put my hand on the part of the ruler that's close to me, cut halfway, and then shift this hand holding the ruler to the end of the ruler, and then cut again. That seems to work for me. But again, this is just a trial. Keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it. And eventually it just falls into place. I experienced recently I had a large panel that I needed to square, but was not sure how to square it. I don't know that I've ever used a panel. It seems like I have an old demo in my tutorials where you fold it. I'm not sure this would work for a panel. I don't know how large your panel is, but when I have blocks that are like 18-inch blocks, there's no ruler for that. So you have to fold them into quarters, and then you put then you put the quarter size. This is so hard to explain. I'm doing a terrible job. You put the quarter size, on the corner of the folded up block, and then you cut the edges. I feel like I have a demo of that. That might help depending on how large your panel is and if it's square or rectangle, because what I'm referring to will work for a rectangle. Will work for a square, but not a rectangle. I usually struggle with the final step of adding the binding. I can't sew it down by hand, and it makes my hands hurt too much. You might try machine binding. I used it for years before I started hand binding, so I used it before. When I first started quilting, I did not like any hand work, and now I'm just like all about it. Except for hand quilting, I'm still not all about that. That's just a lot. I'm impressed with those of you who hand quilt everything. I've got a kind of sort of related to me quilter who hand quilts everything, and she's just amazing. But I just do not have the patience for it. I've done one quilt. But for this particular quilter, you might try machine binding. We have a demo for it, and it's okay. It's okay. You can make it look good. I think it's harder to make it look good, but you can make it look good. I can link toward that demo. Everything that I'm telling you that I have a link to, I have a class for, I have a demo for, I'm going to link them all right below this video. Always helpful in honing your skills. That's a great word for what we're doing. Each quilt we're going to get a little bit better. I like when you share how you pick. I'm trying to define my real preferences. I think that's the important thing, is finding what you like. A lot of people don't. And I want to say I was probably 5-6 years into quilting. I started quilting in 2010. 5-6 years into quilting, and I was like, I finally just looked at my quilts, and I was like, I was enjoying it, by the way. And I was like, my quilts are so ugly. That's what I was thinking. I was like using these giant polka dots, and I'm like, what are you doing? And then it finally dawned on me that I was choosing fabrics, I was choosing colors that were popular because they were popular, and they weren't something that I actually even liked. So finding what you like if you're a solids quilter, you may want to stick with solids. If you're a tiny floral print quilter, you may want to, stick with that. But just buying everything because, it's on sale or what have you, don't just be buying fabric. Buy fabric that you like. And once you've got your stash with just things you like, these choices get easier. Probably not the best thing to say as a fabric shop owner, but that's actually how I feel about it. I've been quilting since 1962. What? That's amazing. So many things I need to finish. I hear you. When I am in my 60s, I imagine my space is going to be full of unfinished quilts too. Learning to quilt my own quilts. We have demos for that if you want to learn that way, and we have some paid classes as well that are a little bit more thorough. I love quilting my own quilts. I do send, especially this year, I've sent a lot of quilts to long armors, but it's costing me a fortune, and I need to start quilting them myself. But sometimes you just don't have the time. So I guess just keep making those decisions based on what you have time for, what you are capable of doing, or have the finances for. I find art gallery fabrics difficult to sew with without using pins and even the smalling pieces. I do use best press. I wonder if your tension is too tight. You might try lengthening your stitch, the gauge for your stitches. I rarely say that. I keep mine just below a 2. But if you're having trouble, it might be your machine or something like that. You might try making your stitch length a little longer. See if that helps. That may help. All right, I think that's it. Oh, prizes. Okay, so y'all have been so much fun. Y'all gave me so many ideas about what to gift for those weeks. We actually ended up getting another long armor for a sponsor. So we're gonna have 2 long arm prizes, and I'm debating whether making those in the same week so that 2 people can win that week, and giving you the week 3 and week 4 as prizes from my shop, Meander and Make. And y'all have let me know that you like pretty much everything. And some of you had some great ideas that I need to make up some binding kits, and I kept thinking about that idea, and it was so great. I think I'm going to end up doing that. But most people want fabric, a free class from your library, maybe rulers. I can do that. love your choices of fabric and how you bundle them. We could do that. So I always worry that I shouldn't be picking out your fabric. Like, I can offer, a bundle of the fabric that I'm going to be using in the quilt along, or I could offer, a $50 gift certificate or something like that, but you actually get more as far as monetary value if I give you the bundle. So let me know, would you rather have a gift certificate, or would you rather me say, hey, you win this bundle? So I'm interested in that, because a lot of people didn't say gift certificate, they said fabric. Are Canadians able to win a prize? Yes. So with the exception of the long armors, could be because, everybody pays their own shipping when it comes to those prizes. Even if you win long arming services, you have to pay to have your quilt shipped back to you. So this is completely worldwide prizes. I'm going to be shipping everything myself. We've got a note card company, Grace and Peace Co., Havel's, and then everything else is coming from me this time. So it's going to be worldwide. No matter what country you're in, you're eligible for the prizes. I'm not on social media. So there's nothing going on social media. So no prizes are giving away there. All of my prizes are based on the 1,600 people participating in this quilt along. And that was something that I've experienced in Dandy and Checky. We have 1,600 people. I think it was a little less for Dandy. But we have that many people participating, and only 100 of them are entering the giveaways. So I don't know what the disconnect is happening between you participating in the quilt along and, sending me pictures of your blogs and not entering the giveaways. So I'm interested to know what's going on there. Do you not understand that you have to click the giveaway button? That's in every single email for this quilt along. It was in every single one for Dandy and Checky too. So I want to make everything easy as pie for all of you. So whatever's not working out, let me know so that I can fix it. But as of right now, when you get your week 1 email, near the bottom of the email, there'll be a enter giveaway button. You have to click that button to get entered. But once you do, that should be all you have to do to enter. There are ways to add entries, like uploading a picture or some other different things, watching a video. There's some different ways to gain extra entries, but to be entered, you actually have to click that button. So let me know what you're experiencing there, or what's not working out, or if I'm not stating it enough. Maybe it's a communication issue. T-shirts, quilt labels, fabric bundles, my Christmas line. I'm actually going to be using those fabrics for this Flossie quilt. I'm not using the Santas because they were too big for the strips, but I am using the rest of the Christmas line. I have only made one other Christmas quilt, so I am really, really excited to use these fabrics. If you haven't seen that fabric line yet, it's called Merrymaking. It releases October 1, and it's really cute. It's really cute. My next purchase will be a Stripology ruler. Oh, I know this quilter. I have reached out to Creative Grid over and over and over again, trying to get that ruler as one of my prizes, trying to get them to donate it, and they have agreed every single time I've reached out, but they never send the ruler for me to actually, gift it to anyone. So I don't know how. We don't actually sell that ruler in the shop because it's hard to ship stuff like that. So I don't know how to get that as one of the prizes. I've done everything I can do about it, but I agree. It's such a great ruler, and it makes strip piecing so much better. Makes strip cutting so much easier, but I can't get them to actually do anything. I don't know what the problem is, because they keep agreeing to be a sponsor and then it doesn't work out, which I'm really sad about, because that company, Creative Grid, that is a great company. Their rulers, all of their products are just amazing, and I would recommend them every which way. Every ruler you buy, I would prefer it to be Creative Grid, because they got the sticky on the back. They're just better everything. So I hate that I can't get that as a prize. All right, several people have asked for the Christmas line discounts. Maybe like a gift certificate. Okay, some wide back. I didn't get that answer a lot, but I could probably give away some wide back fabric. Yeah, this is all just, most people are saying the same things, but this has been just really helpful for me to figure out what y'all want. I can't believe I've just discovered surveys. Yeah, I've still got to figure out the giveaways for week 3, and 4, but I'm working on it. I don't do social media. You don't have to. There's nothing about this quilt-along happening in social media. Now, I will post pictures of progress and videos and stuff like that, but you don't have to be there to participate in this quilt-along or to be eligible for the prizes. I've completely disconnected any of my giveaways for anything I offer from social media because that many people were not on social media. Or that's what I was experiencing with my followers and stuff like that. All right, so what I'm thinking is 1 week I'm going to give away fabric, and then maybe I'll give away fabric and maybe I'll give away a bundle and a gift certificate. We'll step up these prizes. And then the next week I want to give away one of those binding kits. All right, so I hope I haven't rambled too much, and this has been fun, right? I got to hear from you. I don't get to hear from people that much, so it was really, really nice. And I hope I answered some questions, and links to everything will be right below this video. Yeah, I'm excited to start this quilt-along. Let me know if you need anything or have questions. I'm here, and I will see you later.